like right off the bat, the first piece of advice I always give to people if you're trying to work in esports, if you're like, I don't know, maybe in high school or beginning of college and trying to figure out what you want to do, learn some kind of hard skill. If you know you want to work in esports, learn some kind of skill that's employable within the industry and preferably also outside of the industry as a backup plan.
Hey everybody, I'm your host, Drew Proctor, and welcome back to the Esports Careers Podcast. For today's episode, I sat down with Daniel Collette, a producer and host for ESPN Esports. In this episode, we talked about how he got hired on at ESPN, his experiences working in esports production, and just how different esports media is from traditional sports media. All that and more on today's episode of the Esports Careers Podcast. Would you mind kind of introducing yourself and kind of telling me a bit about who you are and what you do inside of esports?
Sure. What's up, everyone? Name's Daniel. I am the video producer for ESPN Esports. Do some occasional on-camera stuff as well for them. I've been working in video production within esports for about like 2.5, 3 years now since I graduated from college. And on top of that, I am also a Twitch streamer on the side. My channel's called Coffee Breath.
You currently work at ESPN, working like on the esports side of things, but you also, I guess, previously did some work with Boston Uprising and Blizzards. Is that right?
Yeah, so I started at my first job out of college. I was a video editor for Blizzard, working in their. It was back before they kind of restructured, back when they did more esports stuff outside of Overwatch. So I was like working on just a variety of esports stuff for them. A lot of like Heroes of the Storm, rest in peace. Yeah, like some Hearthstone here and there, just like kind of random stuff. A lot of work with their collegiate esports brand, Tespa. And then after that, I moved over to the Overwatch League, and I was the video director for the Boston Uprising, which is one of the teams in the league, for all of the 2019 season of the Overwatch League. And then they were relocating, as the original plan for this year for the Overwatch League was to have everyone traveling for their games to play in different cities. That obviously fell through, but the team still relocated to Boston regardless. And so we just kind of parted ways there and just sort of fell into ESPN, just right place at the right time after that.
You were kind of doing some stuff with Blizzard around the Heroes of the Storm days. Did you? And you said, I think you were talking about that you did some stuff with the like collegiate Tespastine.
Yeah.
Did you? I guess there was like a series, or it was like a turn. I don't. It was like a collegiate tournament. It was called like Heroes of the Dorm, I think.
Yeah, I worked
Um,
on that.
that I think that was like the first like televised esports tournament or like event in North America that like I can recall besides what was it? There was a Counter-Strike tournament that used to come on TBS in like 2016. I don't remember what it was called, but I don't remember which came first, but I definitely remember like Heroes of the Dorm being one of the first.
Yeah, I do remember it was televised at one point. I think it was before I was working with them, if I remember correctly. I can't really speak to it being, I would be surprised if it was the first thing that was televised, but I do know that they sort of had a collaboration with ESPN back in the day before I was involved with either of the companies. I think they were trying to kind of push it in the same way they would push like college football. I don't think it really took off that way, but Heroes of the Dorm was one of like the coolest things I've ever worked on. For anyone that doesn't know about it, it was a tournament where school, like colleges could put together a team, and instead of it was like a semester long league. They did two of them a year, and at the end of the year, there was like a big finals that happened in the Blizzard Arena in Los Angeles, which no longer exists. And instead of competing for prize money, they competed for scholarships, which was really cool. So the winning team got their like entire remainder of college paid for by Blizzard,
Wow.
um, which is like nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a that's honestly a really sick concept. It's like
Yeah, it's super cool. It's TESPA's an amazing organization. I think it's changed a lot since I was there, but they still do really good work in terms of like building esports into a college lifestyle in a way that's like healthy and like really positive, and gives back to the people who participate in it. So shout outs to TESPA.
Was TESPA your kind of like first esports gig that you ever got, or was it just like one of the first out of college?
In college, I did a lot of video work, mostly like independent stuff and like freelance that was like related to gaming, like making shows on my own or getting hired freelance to like shoot a Smash tournament, like stuff like that. But in terms of a full time job, yeah, working with Blizzard and Tespa was my first job. I got hired out of like right after college, and moved out here to start working there.
Where did you go to college, and what did you major in?
Yeah, I went to Emerson College in Boston. It's one of the few film schools on the East Coast. I studied video production there. I focused mostly in like editing and screenwriting. Screenwriting obviously didn't really use that. It was more just something I did for fun. But yeah, I at the time thought I wanted to be just a video editor, and so that was my first job at Blizzard. And then other jobs kind of forced me to branch out a little bit. Now I do pretty much everything from pre-production through post-production.
That's something that you always thought you wanted to do, or was that kind of like something that you got like closer like towards the end of high school and you were like I want to do this?
I always wanted to work in the well, I was always interested from a young age in like working in video games, but at the time when I was a kid, I kind of just assumed like, naively that, and I guess things were different back then, that if you weren't like doing coding, like there wasn't any work in the video game industry, and I knew I was bad at coding, so I kind of just uh, didn't end up pursuing that, and so I kind of thought to myself, well, I like film also, so I'll study that in school. And I went to 4 years of film school, and towards the end of that, I realized that as much as I like making, I really enjoy like the art of making video and film and stuff, but I hate the film industry. Just the way it's set up and the type of work that you have to do, especially as a young person in it, it was not appealing to me. And towards the end of college, I was making a lot of like gaming related content on my own. And I kind of started to realize that maybe in some worlds there's a career path there. But it wasn't really until I just was, after school, like randomly applying for jobs and happened to see something on Blizzard's website somehow, and just I was like, oh, that's a long shot, whatever. I don't think I'll get it. And I applied, and they saw some of the content that I had made in school, and they really, really liked it, so they hired me for that. Um, but yeah, it wasn't something where I like I guess, like, cognizantly was like, "I'm going to work in video production and esports." At the time, I probably didn't really even know that that was an option, and I think it only became an option for people as a full-time career, like, sort of recently in the past, like, maybe 5 years or so. So it wasn't a cognizant decision, I guess, but, I knew I wanted to do something in video production, and, I kinda figured, like, it's video production is interesting because, you study it, like, in the context of the film industry for the most part, but it's more of a trade, than anything else, and it can be applied to pretty much any industry, like, every industry needs, like, video people for something in the age of social media, you know? Like I have friends who do like food videos for a living, or people who like shoot concerts for a living. Like they're within film and video production, you can kind of like find a niche that you enjoy, and mine happened to be like the kind of intersection of my interests of video and video games.
That's like a really cool way to think about it. I've never really thought about it, but I guess it is like essentially like a trade, because you can just kind of like swap it over to like like if it's not working here, like you can try it somewhere else. So that's like a cool way of conceptualizing it.
Yeah, when I talk to people about film and stuff, and like or when I tell people I go to film school or went to film school, it's always like I think the assumption is just like, oh, you want to work on movies, but the school that I went to, especially more than others, kind of taught it more like a trade. And it really is that, like you said, you can kind of apply it anywhere in the same way that like you could study marketing and work in video game marketing or like music marketing. It's like it's just a hard skill that can be used anywhere.
And I think that like that has kind of become a trend that I've realized throughout like a few episodes of doing the podcast. Is like you said, like there's marketing jobs in esports, like there's communications jobs, there's like business analytics jobs, there's like data analytics, like there's like normal jobs that you can find anywhere else you can find in esports. So like esports is a lot broader than people think, career wise at least.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's pretty recent too. Like, I think I happen to be kind of in the right place at the right time in terms of joining the industry. Like, I think if I was maybe 4 years older or so, I think I probably would have had a lot harder of a time breaking in, just because I don't think there would have been as many full-time jobs at that point. But it really has grown, especially in LA with the creation of the Overwatch League and the franchise like system getting added into the LCS. Like, it created a lot of job opportunities here in this city specifically.
Like as a producer and host for like ESPN Esports, what does your job look like? Like the data, like what's the day to day look like, and kind of what's the overarching goal of your job?
Sure. Well, eh, should we talk pre-COVID or currently? Because it's pretty different now than what it was when I started.
Well, hoping that COVID isn't around for another decade, let's talk pre-COVID.
Okay, yeah, yeah, all right, let me think back. It's kinda I do a lot of different stuff. So, we have kind of an unusual setup. So the esports team within ESPN, is pretty small, and, pretty much almost everyone on the team, lives in the Connecticut area because that's where the headquarters of ESPN is. And so basically, they had been expanding into video for about like 9 months prior to hiring me on. But everyone was based in Connecticut, and so they were basically just like shooting stuff in the studio and traveling to events and stuff. And they decided that they wanted somebody on the ground in LA to actually cover stuff that happens out here, which makes a lot of sense since this is the kind of hub of esports in the US, especially when Overwatch League was still here. But yeah, so I'm sort of like the I guess boots on the ground person here in LA for them. So I do pretty much everything from like pre-production through post-production. Like, there really isn't any part of I like work pretty independently, creating stuff from like start to finish on my own. We did a lot of pre-COVID. We did a lot of studio stuff. So we would do shows where we'd have a guest come in for an interview. We had a small studio space that we shoot out of. We did like a weekly League of Legends live show there with a couple of our writers who are based here in LA, who are the like only other LA based people on our team. So we'd have a lot of people coming in and out of the studio. So I would shoot studio segments in there, edit those, upload them, or we'd stream them live to Twitch. So there's a lot of like just day-to-day content creation out of the studio there in LA. And then I would pretty frequently, most weekends, either travel to some esports event or go to something here in LA and cover that as well, usually with one of our writers. So we would go and be in the press area for those events and shoot player interviews, shoot like, daily recaps, B-roll of the event, whatever type of content we wanted to create. A lot of the time I was at LCS over in Santa Monica, the Pro League of Legends series that happens pretty much every weekend there. But other times I would travel to stuff. I was in, I think the last thing I was I was in Texas for the Dallas opening of the Overwatch League, and then the last event I did pre-COVID was the Call of Duty League Los Angeles event. So yeah, it was basically like my day to day pre-COVID was kind of a mix of like creating studio content and then traveling to events and creating content at those events.
Does ESPN Esports have any like big competitors? Because when I think of like esports media, I mean, usually, like I think of a lot of like smaller, like I guess like personal content creators and not like bigger companies handling that. But maybe I just don't know of like the big dogs in the game.
Yeah, definitely. We're one of the at this point we're one of the only major like, non-endemic companies in esports. So by that I mean like a company that existed pre-esports and isn't entirely like focused on esports. So at the time when they started, ESPN Esports brand has been around for a while now. I think like over 5 years. But they only in the past about a year and a half, 2 years started doing video stuff. It started off as just editorial. So at the time, they were competing a lot with Yahoo Esports, which no longer exists. And I think off the top of my head, the only other like major esports news outlet out there right now would probably be The Score. They're a Canadian-based kind of like company. It's not too unlike ESPN. Their content is pretty different from ours these days. They don't really do like news stuff. They don't really do. I think they do like podcasts and stuff, but they're more focused on like creating like documentary style content for YouTube. So they would be the only other like major non-endemic organization. Other than that, it's like you said, a lot of smaller, like newer esports focused news sites. Like off the top of my head, Invent Global. I've got a few friends that work over there. What are some other ones like Dot Esports? I know a few of our people on our team used to work for them. So like, there's a lot of like esports focused news outlets, and then like independent content creators, like you said, like someone, for example, like Travis Gafford, who's always at LCS with us. He does like kind of similar content to what we do. It's like his whole or one of his like major focuses is like going to League of Legends events and getting interviews with players, which is kind of what we do as well. So yeah,
Right.
I would say the esports like the esports news media scene is like pretty broad in terms of like what types of companies and creators are out there. But at the end of the day, most of us are creating similar types of content where it's focused on either breaking news stuff or like going to events and getting interviews with players.
Are there like any big gaps in esports media that like you've noticed or like that you see? Because I'm not like the biggest sports fan, but I like to watch like NBA and stuff. And so like you have like First Take, but like there's like for me, like I'm not sure if there's like an equivalent of like First Take for esports. So like are there like any other gaps in esports media that like you've noticed?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not a very big scene right now. Like, it's something that not a lot of people can make a full-time living doing at the moment. So there's not a whole lot of variety out there in terms of like what's being offered. I think you see uh, more creative and unique stuff coming out of the independent content creators, just because of like the nature of like their independence and being able to, kind of be nimble and do whatever they want to do. Our stuff is we definitely look to other like ESPN shows for like influence for what we do. So like we, do a lot of our shows have like borrow ideas from like Pardon the Interruption or like other like popular ESPN shows like that, and sort of apply that to an esports format. So I think our content fills the most. I would say in terms of like stuff that I'm aware of in the esports scene, our stuff is very um, like kind of modeled after traditional sports media more so than other outlets. And there's a market for everything. There's people who want that and people who don't. I think something that I personally would like to see more of is like stuff that's more less like I guess analytical and I guess traditional in terms of coverage. This isn't speaking like about ESPN specifically, but I think that everyone in general that I see really wants to be like I see a lot of like content creators and news outlets like really trying to be like that like traditional media outlet. And while I think there is a market for that, I think that there's also a market for more like personality based stuff, and I think that's a little bit missing right now. I think that there's some I have some close friends in the Overwatch League who are really great personalities, and they've done a great job of like bringing that personality into their content, and really like enabling those guys like Bren, Sideshow, reinforce all of the talent that they have to, you know, like be funny and be themselves and do stuff that's like goofy and stupid and not just like analyzing the game. Like I love stuff like that. Um, it's not something that everyone can be good at. You know, you have to be funny and entertaining and have a good sense of humor and also knowledgeable about the games to like make that type of stuff work. So I think that's why you don't see it a lot, because it takes a special type of person to be able to do that well. But yeah, I think there's definitely room for more of that in esports. I think um, when companies look to break into esports, they want to like, you know, be that, especially like bigger companies, they want to be that like, you know, straight laced, like, you know, traditional by the books type of media coverage of it. And there is definitely room for that, like I said, but I think that, everyone, not just like news outlets, but this includes like leagues and stuff as well. I think that they all want to take a very traditional like sports approach to it, and I think that there is room to be more creative in esports than that in terms of like the content that the leagues themselves are making and the content that the media covering those leagues are making. So. If that makes sense, I kind of rambled on for a while there, but I think you probably got my point.
Yeah, I think I understand you pretty much. Like they kind of want to take like the traditional approach, but they leave like a gap. They leave like the personality side of it to be desired, because they want to like be as brand friendly as possible, I guess. Is that kind of what you're going
Yeah,
for?
yeah, definitely. And I think you can still be brand friendly and be like, you know, a little bit more loose with your content, but it is a harder line to walk, definitely.
Right.
And I think that when you see a lot of companies like the or in leagues specifically, like, you know, like the Overwatch League and LCS and stuff, a lot of the people who are brought into, you know, uh, produce those and put that on are being brought in from the sports world, and I think that's why you're seeing that. And it makes sense, you know. That's uh, if Blizzard wants to hire like, you know, a bunch of people who like, you know, used to work on the NFL broadcast, they're gonna make content that's like kind of similar to that, you know. So it makes sense. I just think that there's room for more of that, both from the league's perspective and from the media's perspective as well.
I'm kind of like interested in what the job application like interview process looked like for like ESPN Esports, because like I'm not sure. Obviously, ESPN Esports is like a part of ESPN, but like does ESPN Esports kind of have their own like hiring manager, or like what was it like getting hired on at ESPN?
It was an interesting process. Definitely the most intense like interview process I've had, because it's like, you know, a like big company. It wasn't too unlike Boston Uprising, because, you know, they're owned by the Patriots. So this was like kind of my second time coming into a traditional sports company that was looking to break into esports. Yeah, so basically the way it's set up is that esports is sort of just treated like a department within the company, like anything else. Like, you know, there's the NBA team, there's the NFL team, and there's the esports team. We're obviously like by far the smallest of all of those by a long shot, and we also cover everything, not just like, you know, one game. So that makes us a little bit different as well. But yeah, in terms of how it's set up, we're just treated like any other department, and so we use all of the resources of the like larger ESPN. So my first, I guess I'll just walk you through the hiring, like the process of me getting this job. So after I left, just kind of parted ways naturally with the uprising when they were moving. I was looking for work, wasn't really sure what was going to come next. And I just happened to, I don't even remember how I found out that ESPN was looking for a video person. So I applied for it. And it started with phone calls from like their HR people. They reached out to me, had some phone interviews with them. That was less, those interviews were less focused on esports, obviously, because those people are not esports people. So it was more just like asking me generally about like job history and stuff, and what types of work I do and what I would be looking for out of the job, stuff like that. And then from there, I started having some phone interviews with people actually like on the esports team. And then those got a little bit more in depth in terms of like I guess the esports side of things, like what games I'm most familiar with, what types of content I've made within the esports scene, stuff like that. And then I think I had a few different phone interviews, and then at some point they flew me out to Connecticut to interview with them in person, which was a crazy day. I think I got on I got on a plane, did an interview, and then came back all within like less than 48 hours, which was a weird experience. But yeah, I went there in person, met with like their HR people first, and then they have some kind of name for it, ESPN. I forget what it's called, but their hiring process, they do like basically a gauntlet of interviews just to like test your like just to make sure you can like keep up and like handle like multiple hours straight of interviews. Like it's like I forget, they have some funny name for it, like the gauntlet or something. And they basically like sit you down in a room and just have everyone who you could ever possibly interact with in the company like come and interview you for a few minutes. And you just do like a absolute like run of it through the entire company. Like I was talking to people who like uh good and talented and smart people, but like people that I haven't even interacted with since then. Like I think I had probably over 10 interviews in in a 5 hour long period. And then I think finally the last one I think was with our senior video producer who's my boss. And that was like, that was the like long, more like focused one. And we had already spoken a few times at that point. But yeah, it was just a lot of questions about what type of stuff I'd want to make, what type of work I've done in the past, stuff like that. And then I came back here, and then I think within 48 hours or so, they called me and offered me the job. So
Kind of earlier, I hadn't even thought about this, but like ESPN has like different departments for like basketball and like football, and then like ESPN Esports is its own department. But you guys cover like all competitive esports, right?
yeah.
Um, and so have like did you come into it knowing the fundamentals of most esports, or did you have to like take like like pretty much like quick courses on like understanding like a bunch of different esports? Like what did that, or did they just put you into like esports that like you already knew about, like Overwatch and like League, or what?
Yeah, it was like a little bit of it was a mix of both, I'd say. So I came into it knowing, I mean, I've been like in the esports scene for many years. Prior to my thing is mostly fighting games. That's how I got into esports. Prior to even working in the industry, I've been competing in games like Street Fighter, Smash, Marvel vs. Capcom, stuff like that for like probably about 8 years now. So that's my like personal like preference in esports in terms of like what we cover. And so yeah, I came into it obviously with like expertise in some areas, and even still, there are some games I definitely knew less. Like I had never worked in League before, and I'm not really a MOBA person, so like Heroes of the Storm kind of prepared me for it a little bit, but was probably I'm probably the least experienced League person on the team. I mean now I'm much more familiar with it, but it's just because it's our biggest focus as a team. It's the biggest esport in the world, and it's what most of our team was built around, was covering League initially. So it's a big focus of ours. So I definitely had some learning to do there. I started learning before I even started the job. When I left the Overwatch League, because the Overwatch League was spreading out across the country, no longer based entirely in LA, and so it did limit some job opportunities here. And so when I left the Overwatch League, I kind of knew in the back of my head, if I'm going to keep working in esports, there's a pretty high chance I'm going to end up doing something related to League of Legends because I'm staying in LA. And so I kind of started learning it then, like in anticipation of that. And then naturally, I did end up having to work a lot in League of Legends, so I'm glad I did that. But uh, yeah, I came into it with at least like a base understanding of pretty much every game, just because this is my life. It has been for many years, so it wasn't anything new to me. Um, But yeah, there are definitely games that I'm less familiar with. Like we cover a lot of Call of Duty as well, and I am not super familiar with that at all. I'm pretty hands off with our Call of Duty content. Like we do our best to sort of like divide up. To answer your question, we divide up kind of like areas of expertise for people. So obviously, COVID really kind of took a big hit on the fighting game scene. So there hasn't been much happening there. But like prior to that, I was putting together most of our fighting game content because I'm one of the only people on the team that really focuses on that scene and knows it well. So that was a lot of my responsibility, and we've dialed back on our Overwatch coverage as well. But I was doing a lot of that just because, like, those are my areas of expertise. But we all bounce around a little bit between everything. But there are definitely, like, everyone has their game that they know the best. So like I'm less involved with outside of Worlds. I'm less involved with our League of Legends stuff, and I'm less involved with our Call of Duty stuff generally. But we do a little bit of everything. In terms of like outside of Worlds, which is happening right now, which takes over our entire focus this year since COVID hit, I've kind of taken lead on our Valorant coverage. So that's sort of my main focus at the moment, is creating like the vast majority of our Valorant content.
Do you think, or I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but how long do you think it will be until ESPN Esports is like divided up, or maybe it'll never happen? You know it better than I do. But like how long until it's divided up by game, like in terms of like work wise?
I don't know. I can't really speak to the like long-term like roadmap for the team. I'm usually not really involved in those conversations. I think that I could see it happening someday. I don't see it being anytime soon. Right now, as a video team, we're 4 people, including like our senior producer, my boss. In terms of like people, he does more like managerial stuff generally, for the most part. And so, like, in terms of people like uh, daily producing stuff, it's like 3 of us. So we're still very, very small. And then outside of that, if you include editorial, I think we have maybe 13 to 15 people in total as a department, which includes like writers and editors and stuff. So definitely not anytime soon. We would have to really expand before we would start dividing stuff up like that. Right now, everyone still does a little bit of everything, and we do our best, like I said, to put people in the areas of their expertise. But yeah, I would see it being a long, long way down the road before that happens. I think the team would really have to grow in a way that I'm not. I like it's the type of growth that I would imagine we need for that is not something that comes overnight. Definitely.
Esports is just like so much different than sports in the way that esports, besides like of course like League of Legends and like Counter-Strike, the lifespan of like esports titles really isn't that long. Whereas like we're always, or for the most part, we're always going to have soccer and football and baseball and like golf. Like those are just going to be around. Like sports don't really like sports aren't really like a flavor of the month type deal, but esports titles can be. Like especially recently with like all of the battle royale games that came out. Like it was kind of like a battle royale was like, let's just say like Apex was the flavor of the month for like 2 or 3 months, and then like PUBG came back in, and then like Fortnite took back over. So it's kind of weird how esports operates.
Yeah, you're right on the money there. That was sort of my other point that I was thinking as well, is that in order for that to ever happen, where like we were separated into like game specific departments like that, we'd have to have a lot more stability in the esports scene. Like, for example, let me think of a game off the top of my head that we like covered a lot in the beginning and don't cover now. I think I guess I think even before I started working for them, like they had I think really focused hard on Apex in the beginning when it first came out, and then it just didn't really go anywhere as an esport. And I think we occasionally will still, like, very rarely, if there's like some big news, we'll do a video on it. But like, yeah, for example, if they had like right then and there, like built out an entire Apex team, like where would all of those people have gone in like 2 months when the esports scene didn't exist? So yeah, in order to have that kind of like division of labor, the world of esports needs to become a bit more stable, which is not something that I see happening in the like near or foreseeable future. Like with the rate of in which like new games come out and the amounts of money that are like pumped into them and then subsequently not pumped into them afterwards, when things don't go the way that people expect, like it's all just too volatile, I think, at the moment to divide that. Like esports fans are there. There's an audience for it 100%. That's why our department exists. And there are games that are big enough to cover in that way. But we're definitely not at a point where like there are, set games that aren't going anywhere other than, like you said, League and Counter-Strike's still obviously the biggest esport in the world, but we see Valorant really kind of already like taking a large portion of that audience, especially in North America now. So it's like even the top dogs are not set in stone, I guess you could say.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna ask you this because you said that you like primarily started in the FGC, and I'm not like super like big in the FGC. Like I don't know a whole lot about it, but like FGC is primarily like live events and like it like lands and whatnot. And so do you think this is like completely off topic, but do you think that COVID will push FGC to be more of an online competitive community, or what do you think is going to happen with the FGC?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. It's been a really tough time for fighting games because, like you said, for people who don't know, it's a scene that is almost entirely focused on like in-person competition, and that is mostly a result of the nature of the games. The the like competitive environment that you need to have like a, I guess, legitimate competition in fighting games is nearly impossible to create online, which is why in-person events have always been like the main focus for that community. Is that like no matter how good your online netcode is and how good like your matchmaking system is or whatever, fighting games will never be perfect online because the games are built around oftentimes like scenarios that come down to a literal frame by frame moment, which few other games have to the degree that fighting games do. And we're definitely not in a world where you can have a perfect like connection in that way that can support that between two people without like somehow kind of like impacting the integrity of the game. I mean, there's definitely online fighting game events happening right now, but it's more like out of necessity. Like prior to that, prior to COVID happening, there were few and far between like online events that people really paid attention to, just because like that's not really what the community is built around. In terms of will this change that, I don't. It's definitely caused a lot more conversation about like having some of these developers put more attention into their netcode, and there's definitely room for improvement despite the like technological limitations. Of what's possible. Like fighting games can still be better online than they are right now as a genre. And so I think there's been more of a conversation about that, and developers are noticing that and listening. One of the big things that happened since COVID started was I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but a fan basically created a online an online net code for Super Smash Bros. Melee on the GameCube, which is a game that came out in 2001. Yeah, so netplay, I guess, well, it's this is sort of a different conversation, but it is important, I think, to consider, and it's like a good example of what is possible and what isn't happening in the industry for fighting games. So NetPlay already existed within like emulators and stuff. You could already do that, but basically what this one person did is they went and they created rollback netcode, which is a different kind of netcode than most competitive games use. Most competitive games, including fighting games, are built on delay-based netcode, which this is going to get really technical, but I'll try to explain it like quickly and simply. But delay-based netcode basically means like the game creates like basically a delay between your actions and seeing them on screen. So like if there's a lot of lag, like that feeling that you get if you're playing in a really laggy game and like you like click your mouse but you don't actually see the result of it until like a half a second later. That's delay based netcode. It's because it waits for it, like sends a ping to the server and then gives it back to you. There's another kind of netcode that a lot of games don't use because it's so difficult to make and execute properly, but it's called rollback netcode, which basically predicts every action that you're doing before you do it. And if it's wrong, then it rolls it back to a frame prior where it wasn't wrong. And the difference there is that there's no delay. Your actions are happening real time. When you press a button, you will get that response immediately. And so it allows for much more stable and like offline like feeling types of connections between people, which is really important for fighting games. And so basically what this guy did was he built a program within an emulator that gave Melee a rollback netcode, which is a game that, you know, is from 2001, had no online play to begin with. So like absolutely like amazing accomplishment. And this guy did it literally all by himself. His name is Fizzy on, I forget his Twitter handle is, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but if you search for Fizzy, you'll find him. Incredibly talented guy to put that together by himself. But basically, it was like him doing that on his own, him making this like amazing feeling rollback netcode that feels like you're playing next to like with a person next to you, all by himself in a game from 2001. Kind of made people start to have a conversation like, if he can do this by himself, like why the hell doesn't like Nintendo's like current Super Smash Brothers game have something like this? Like he's literally one guy, and so this need for better online during COVID has sort of like I guess invigorated that conversation among the community, and people are listening. Nintendo went back, I think, a few months ago and updated the Smash Ultimate netcode. It's not rollback netcode, and it's not a whole lot better than it was before, but that game has notoriously shitty online, and so you know they went a few months ago. They put out an update that tried to improve it a little bit, which you know was not something that they had to do, but they chose to do it, and you know they haven't addressed uh, the rollback netcode that was made for Melee. They tend to be pretty hands off in terms of the Melee community and just let it do its thing. So it maybe they saw that and you know got a little embarrassed and decided like, hey, our netcode could be a little bit better. So the conversations are happening within the community, and the developers seem to be listening. But at the end of the day, although there's room for improvement in online play and fighting games, it'll never replace offline competition. To kind of bring it back full circle and answer your question there, it just like the technological limitations of what's possible with internet in the United States, especially with our you know relatively like pretty shit internet compared to most other parts of the world. I don't ever see a world in which online play takes over for fighting games.
And I think that's kind of one of the things that I admire about the fighting game community from like their scene is live events just have like a different type of energy, and like it's like a really addictive type of energy. And I mean like the fighting game community is just like so much more unique and different than like other esports communities. It's just like a different feel, I guess. But that's from like an outside perspective. I'm not like the biggest fighting game community guy, so I can't speak too much on it.
No, you're definitely right. I mean, that was a lot of what got me fighting games. Like I didn't really get into esports. I got into fighting games. It's always kind of been its own thing, you know?
Right.
Like it existed pre-esports and it'll exist if esports ever dies as a concept. Like the fighting game community will still exist because it doesn't really it's sort of its own like, you know, kind of corner that has some like involvement in the esports scene, but it's still very much its own separate thing, and it's just because of the nature of the games. You know, like I got into it because it was really cool to like go to my local like arcade slash game store that had like Smash tournaments on Friday nights, and that was what I would do in high school. I would like go there and compete, and I love the feeling of like sitting down next to someone and competing with them. Like it's not something that you really get in any other game unless you reach like the very very top level. It was kind of funny for me as I started to like I didn't really get that much into the general, like the broader world of esports until I started working in it, just because there's not that much like job opportunity within the fighting game scene. But it was always interesting to like be at an event and talk to someone. They're like, "Wow, this is my first like in-person esports event. Like this is so cool." And it would be like this like giant like stadium or like, some like crazy large venue with like 20,000 people watching. And it was always just like so surreal to me to be like, you've never, I guess you're like, yeah, other people that haven't experienced that. Like if you don't get into fighting games, you don't like meet up with other people in person, and you don't have that feeling of like competing on your own, And I love that, and it's how I've met a lot of my closest friends in the world, is just through fighting games and going to tournaments. And uh, you know, it's a really cool thing to have in my life. Like when I moved from Boston to LA, I didn't know that many people, but I made a lot of my close friends just by like going to Street Fighter tournaments. Like, I was doing back in Boston. Like I found some here and started going, and I met people and started hanging out with them. Like it's a really cool social thing. And I'll never be the best in the world. And that was never my goal. But I love the feeling of competing, and I love the social aspect of it, and you don't really get either of those in any other video game.
And that's just, I guess that's just because it is so personal to like just be able to like walk up to somebody and be like, "Hey, want to 1v1?" Let's
Yeah.
fight. I guess we'll kind of hop back over to kind of like your profession. What qualities would you say are a necessity for somebody who wants to become like a producer and a host in esports?
Qualities, do you mean like skills or like more like personality type of stuff? Like what types of qualities are you thinking?
Yeah, probably both, like technical
Hmm.
skills and like personality wise.
Yeah, I guess like right off the bat, the first piece of advice I always give to people, if you're trying to work in esports, if you're like, I don't know, maybe in high school or beginning of college and trying to figure out what you want to do, um, learn some kind of hard skill. Like if you want to if you know you want to work in esports, learn some kind of skill that's employable within the industry, and preferably also outside of the industry as a backup plan. So, like something, for example, like what I do is video production. Like, it was a lot easier for me to break into the industry because I had like hard skills like video production. Like, it's a thing that I can do that people need. That makes money, and you need it. Maybe not necessarily like college level training for it, but you do need like demonstratable skill in that field to get a job in it. I think you could say the same for like marketing. I think maybe social media as well. Like the people that I've seen kind of struggle for a long time to break into the industry or not really know how to get into it or just have trouble like finding work are people that maybe studied something like totally different than esports, like I don't know, something random like history, like that has just like nothing to do with the industry, because you don't have that like hard demonstratable skill that people need. um, so if your goal is just to work in esports and do something in esports, I would say have some kind of skill that's employable in the industry. Um, and also, just random topic off of that. Something I was having a conversation with my friends on one of my shows recently was that there are a lot of schools starting to offer degrees in esports or teach esports classes, and I would strongly recommend that you don't do that if you're thinking about it, because you're pigeonholing yourself in a way that is probably going to not pay off well for you. Like, if you can't get a job in esports and you have an esports degree, like you're kind of shit out of luck, right? And also, what is even an esports degree? Like, what are you even learning? That's not like a hard skill, Like, marketing is a hard skill. Social media is a hard skill. Like, esports is not a hard skill. So that's my biggest piece of advice. Kind of a little bit of a tangent there, but have some kind of hard skill to break into the industry with. In terms of video production specifically, I would say the type of stuff that you need is definitely you have to be able to grind. Like, unfortunately, like the nature of the esports industry, whether it's in video or not, is very like kind of, because it's a new industry, it's very like startup mentality where everyone does a little bit of everything, and people, probably do a few people's worth of jobs, and you're going to be working long hours. So you have to be cool with that type of stuff. Unfortunately, don't let people take advantage of you, but you definitely, are to make some compromises there. So yeah, definitely like have the like stamina and ability to work long hard hours like that. I would say for video stuff as well, be as flexible as you can in terms of your skill set. I mostly focused on editing when I was in school, and I wanted to just be an editor, and I didn't really care about other stuff, which is fine if you're going into the film industry. But something like esports, where, like I said, you're going to have to wear a lot of hats. You got to at least be comfortable with, like, if editing is your thing, that's cool. You can probably find a video editor job, but realistically, you might be in a situation where someone's going to ask you to shoot something, or someone's going to ask you to write a script for something. Like, you're going to want to make sure you can at least do all of that stuff to a like passing like basic level. So I would say make your video skills as broad as possible. Definitely have your thing that you're best at. Like, if editing is your thing and you want to show like a really sick editing reel to people and find work that way, like that's dope. That will work for you probably. But just like be prepared to do a little bit of everything, because there are very few jobs in esports video production that only have you doing just one thing. So that would be my biggest piece of advice for that.
Kind of speaking on what you had said earlier about the show that you do, because you were talking about like don't just get the esports focused degree that doesn't really have much carryover. I was watching your last show of Coffee Breath. Is that kind of like your own personal project that you do every Friday? Like, what's kind of the idea? Because you've been doing it for, I guess you kind of used to do it 2 years ago, and then you just kind of recently brought it back over the past 2 months.
Yeah, so I have this Twitch channel called Coffee Breath, which has taken many forms over many years. It's always kind of been me making things with my friends in one way or another, whether it was like, producing like shows in college, or that were like gaming focused, or doing more like just general like more variety type of stuff now. It's been sort of like my personal brand for many years now. I was doing very different stuff with it back in the day, but basically when COVID kicked in, I started streaming a lot more, just to kind of have a creative outlet and have some human interaction. And it took off pretty well in a way that it hadn't in the past, and a lot of that was to do with the release of Valorant. That was mostly what I was streaming then. Yeah, I sort of took that success that I had found on Twitch earlier on this year, and kind of pivoted that into doing less gaming related stuff and more like creative, like variety type of stuff with my friends on there. So basically, what it is right now is like kind of a channel for me and my friends to just like make weird shit and have fun and be creative. And it's definitely like definitely gaming focused stuff sometimes. Like I just do still stream a lot of me playing games on there, but at the moment what we're most focused on right now is our weekly show called the Coffee Breath Show, which is me and my friends hanging out at the bar that we built in my apartment. That's sort of like our set. And we get together every Friday night, and every episode has some kind of different like bit, I guess you could call it. Like, that's why we call it a variety show. So there's like a theme every week, like a thing that we're doing, or like a topic that we're talking about. And so every week is just a different thing that we do at Bar Coffee Breath. So that's the Coffee Breath Show. It's Friday nights at 8 p.m. Pacific on my channel. But yeah, just the creative outlet for me. I mean, we make money on Twitch, but it's not like my full-time job. Just what I do for fun with my friends.
This is like the first episode that I've seen of it, is when I watched it last Friday, and I thought the idea for that episode was pretty cool. You were kind of, I guess, teaching or like trying to explain League to two of your friends that have never played the game. It seemed like they got the idea of it pretty well, which was kind of hard for me to understand, because I remember when I first started playing League, it took me like a good 3 months to like understand the like basics and fundamentals of the game. So I was just surprised that they understood it like as well as they did from what 30 or 40 minutes of you explaining it.
Yeah, it was fun. We like to do like bits like that kind of lean into our personalities. Like most of the people on the show with me are friends of mine from college who don't really play video games, which is why it's not really generally a gaming focused show. But it's sort of like, given the nature of me being who I am, it's usually tangential to gaming and somehow. is how I would describe it. So yeah, I mean, the bit there was that the two of my friends who do the show with me I mean, they play games casually, but like they don't really know much about League or esports other than what I tell them from my work. And so yeah, we thought it would be funny to try to like explain to them without showing any video or anything. Like there was no we purposefully like didn't include any like clips of the game or any gameplay at all. I wanted to just see what it would be like to try to like explain League of Legends to someone with just a pen and paper. Which yeah, we just look for fun bits like that. Just like weird shit that you wouldn't usually see on Twitch. Like we did an episode where we ate like the world's hottest like ghost pepper like beef jerky and then tried to like interview each other. Yeah, we just do stupid shit like that. It's a really fun break from the work that I do for a living.
Well, yeah, that's really all the questions I had. Do you have any like other advice or kind of anything else you'd like to say to people looking to pursue esports?
Yeah, I guess one last piece of advice that I usually give to people is this is probably going to be a little bit more specific to video, but I think you could kind of apply the same concept anywhere. If you're trying to get into esports and especially if you're in college right now, use that opportunity to make something that you can show to people. Have like basically like a portfolio, not necessarily a portfolio, even more just like a proof of concept. So like I mentioned back in the beginning when we were talking about how I got started with Blizzard, I I had made a like gaming related talk show in college, and although that didn't like go anywhere, really take off or anything, I was able to show that to Blizzard, and that's how I got that job. Just like it's like you can talk all day about how good you are at a thing, but if you can actually show someone like proof of your skill, then it's way more valuable. So I always advise people to work within your means and do what you can, and just try to have something that you can show to people, whether it's like a podcast or like if you're a journalist, if you want to be a journalist in the esports world, like, start writing articles on your own. Don't think about how many people are seeing them or whether or not you're going to get famous off of it. Just like have a concrete example of your skill that you can show to people when you're applying for jobs that isn't just a degree or or like a vouch from someone else. Like, have something you can demonstrate your skill with. And if you're, especially for video, like make the type of content on your own that you want to make for a living, and then show that to people, and they will have a much better understanding of your skills and your passion as well.
Yeah, I can personally vouch for that advice because I kind of wish I had gotten my portfolio started while I was in college. So I'm kind of getting a late start, but I 100% agree with you on that. Daniel, thanks for coming on. Where can people kind of find you? I know you said that they can find you on Twitch at twitch.tv/coffeebreath, but where else can they find you?
Yeah, most of my content I make for Twitch. It's on there. Coffee Breath, all one word, on Twitch. You can find me on the best place to find me on social media is Twitter. I'm pretty active on there. My tag is just Daniel J Collette, as in the letter J. It's Collette is my last name. Yeah, you can find me on there. I post about all the things that I make on other sites, so that's the best way to find me. I also, I'm everywhere. You can find me on Instagram with the same handle. And I have a Discord server for my coffee breath content. So like I'm all over the place. If you find me on any social media, I usually link to my other stuff pretty easily. So find me on all platforms at Daniel J Collette.
If you've enjoyed this episode of the Esports Careers Podcast, help us spread the word by rating and reviewing the podcast. That way, I can keep making great episodes for you to listen to, and it helps other people find us too. If you've got a question for me or someone you'd like me to interview, you can reach me on Twitter at DweebGG. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.